be here today. As Mike said and Josh said, I got to work with their team a few weeks ago, and I love talking about anything delegation. I kind of nerd out on it, but our company has been around for over 15 years, working with small businesses and entrepreneurs and really helping them figure out how to elevate their businesses through delegation. And so some of the topics I'll share today come out of over 15 years of really research and experience in working with these companies to help these leaders realize their vision, make it happen, and figure out how to really utilize their team to the best of their ability, identifying the talents and opportunities that really exist across the team. So it's not all just sitting on one person to get it done. So I'm really thrilled to be here to share that with you today. Well, so I really believe that every visionary has a delegation bottleneck type. As a leader, no matter where you sit within the organization, whether you're a visionary on the leadership team, running a department, over time, we tend to develop habits to protect and grow our part of the business. And at a certain point, those defensive behaviors begin to really stunt our company or department's growth. And your bottleneck type really holds the key to reaching your next level of growth as a leader. And so today, my goal is to really help you identify those habits and figure out what you can begin doing now to make the change that you want to see in yourself and that you can cascade throughout the organization. That's where we're going to focus today. I really believe that in a fast-paced and really increasingly complex world these days, effective delegation is crucial for organizations to thrive and for leaders to function at the highest level. It keeps you from wasting precious time on mundane tasks and really allows you to focus on big picture objectives, decision-making, and most importantly, your most impactful contribution. Growth, freedom, and achieving the vision for your role or your company are the direct results of mastering delegation. Challenges with delegation, though, stem from our own set of self-limiting beliefs, behavioral choices, if you will, self-sabotaging thoughts that hold us back from being ready to really let go. And until we address some of those root behaviors, we will always find ourselves struggling with it, no matter how much training and organization we may have around delegation. And to be honest, to me, this is the missing piece in a lot of delegation training. You can go anywhere and learn how to delegate, but if you don't address that root behavior that's holding you back, that makes it challenging for you to delegate, you're never going to see success with that type of skill. So my goal is to really focus on what no one is talking about, that mindset and behavior that holds us back. And really, to me, those behaviors are at the heart of why people struggle, but they're also at the heart of being able to delegate well. So when we talk about delegating well, there are 3 components I want you to kind of keep in mind. And the model that you see in the slides is built as a circle because it symbolizes that all these parts are connected and they need to be connected in order to achieve success when it comes to delegating well. The first one is discipline, and this is about your own commitment to seeing a delegation through. You can put a delegation out there, but if you don't have that follow through, it's going to fall flat. The second is art, and that's the way you design and approach the what of delegation. To me, this is the fun part, identifying what you can let go of, and like thinking about all those different possibilities that live out there. And then the third piece is science. And this is the process by which delegation is managed. This is what we call the handoff. This is actually how you get this thing off your plate and just onto someone else's plate. So if you can diagnose which of these 3 parts you get stuck on, you can definitely start to think more objectively and use tools to attack that piece strategically. So for instance, if you're someone who can't stay focused, or maybe you lack a little bit of accountability, it's likely a behavioral issue, and we can look at the discipline piece and figure out how to fix that. If you're someone that you just don't know what to hand off, you struggle with what you can actually hand off to someone else on your team, that's probably you're struggling with the art piece. And if you're someone who's just struggling to actually hand it off effectively and for people to do it the way you're expecting to, you're probably struggling a little bit with that science piece. So it's also important to recognize that you may struggle with a mix of all of these three things. And depending on where you are in your journey, it can shift. But today's goal is to give you a few tools and perspectives so that you can have effective conversations for change around these. And that's what we're going to explore. I'm curious, as you think about discipline, art, and science, does one come to mind as an area that you might struggle? I'd love to hear from a couple of you what instantly you think you struggle with the most. Right now, and I can't really see hands, so yeah, sorry.
John, can you turn that camera around? Mute that one too. Okay, cool. So I would say the one I struggle with is the handoff. I never really do a good job of handing off. Tim, what do you struggle with, delegation?
I think I can do it better than everybody else, maybe.
So that might be true.
But then it becomes bottleneck. So.
No, we all struggle. I struggle with that too. I think I can do it better than everyone else as well. So I guess. Awesome. So we're going to focus more on the discipline piece today. That is typically where most people struggle. And once you can get past the discipline and really create that commitment to seeing things through, the rest of the pieces can fall into place. But what I will say is that the art and science are equally important. So I'm going to hit on pieces of that as we talk about the discipline. And then certainly, as Mike's team has experienced, there's deeper delegation training around those pieces that our company offers. So let's dive into discipline. So again, discipline is your own commitment to see a delegation through. And I often think that the whole term discipline naturally brings about a negative connotation and emotion for most leaders, specifically because it means you've got to stay in your lane. But our ability to really temper and leverage ourselves helps us to achieve real progress. So discipline is important. And so while this may be the hardest part of delegating for many, it is the most essential, especially if you have a vision of creating a culture of delegation across your organization, meaning everyone on the team is being leveraged to do their best and most important work. And I think it's important to remember that discipline comes from the word disciple, right? Which is to learn and to teach. So to me, it should have a more educational connotation to it. You're teaching and training yourself how to embrace delegation in a healthy way. So understanding that progress is more important than perfection and continuing with the commitment to see things through even when we get bored, this is what will make true progress for us when it comes to delegation. So let's talk about what it means to be a game-changing leader when it comes to discipline. We've identified 3 behaviors that we think are essential for leaders to be really disciplined, especially in their delegation journey. Keep in mind, this is the ideal. This is the horizon, what we hope all leaders strive for to elevate themselves. But even I, as someone who teaches this day in and day out, I struggle with these every now and then too. So that's totally normal. We're human, but this is the ideal, what we are aiming for and striving for. So the first behavior that indicates a leader is truly disciplined is that they respect systems. In a growing company, confusion equals chaos. So this commitment to systems and process allows leaders to increase their leverage and impact, especially during periods of fast growth. So systems are key. A disciplined leader is also willing to be held accountable. They know that accountability starts up at the top, and their commitment to leading by example is evident in their own discipline to stay in their lane and respect the established plan and priorities. This I see as a huge challenge for a lot of leaders because for many of you, this may resonate with you, but you may be constantly chasing shiny objects and getting distracted by new ideas that live out there. And those are all great. But if you can't hold accountable to the priorities that are set in that moment for your company, it's going to create chaos for the rest of the team. So that accountability is really important. And then finally, a disciplined leader is able to temper themselves for the greater good of their vision. They understand that growth, while exciting and validating, can easily disrupt their ability to focus on their single most valuable contribution, their vision. The intentional commitment to not chase those shiny objects when things get hard creates a culture of focus and discipline. So adopting all three of these behaviors of the discipline leader, especially when we get stuck or frustrated in the delegation journey, these are going to help us become more disciplined. So we want to keep these in mind as we move forward. But even with those ideals in mind, there are definitely behaviors that are holding you back. They're making it harder for you to be a disciplined leader. And that's what I want to explore a little more deeply today. With those ideal behaviors in mind, let's talk about the behaviors that hinder success and hinder a leader's ability to really let go so that you can all start to recognize and name those behaviors as they're occurring. I think there's power in that. And ultimately, I want you to be able to identify ways to overcome those behaviors. So as I start to jump into our bottleneck behaviors, I want you to keep in mind that leaders often exhibit one, some, or all of these behaviors at various times. There are certainly ones that I gravitate toward more frequently than others, but depending on what my role is in a situation, the circumstances, I'm going to gravitate towards the others from time to time. And what I think is also important to note is that these behaviors are both psychological and emotional in nature. Some are habits that we've just developed over time, and some are just innate. They're hardwired. We were born that way. So as I mentioned, we have spent 15 years as a delegation company helping business leaders and entrepreneurs figure out how to let go effectively and entrust their team to take on these tasks and projects that are weighing them down. And we found 5 common behaviors that we see leaders exhibit most often when it comes to delegation. And as I said, putting a name to that type of behavior is important and it's powerful because it becomes easy to spot and diagnose those behaviors objectively as they surface. So once you understand which behaviors you exhibit, your ability and your team's ability to spot and name these kinds of behaviors and then put up some guardrails and awareness around them is going to allow you truly to take that first step in becoming an effective, great delegator and finding a new level of freedom for yourself in your position. So as I mentioned, these are called the bottleneck behaviors, and we have the hero, the interventionist, the isolationist, the time optimist, and the dreamer. And so I want to share more about each of these. And as you're hearing the description, I encourage you to kind of write down which one resonates most with you, what feels most like you, because I want to hear a little bit about that at the end. So let's begin with the hero. These are the people that always want to save the day. If you are a hero, your team probably requires too much information and permission from you, and it's really stunting company growth and employee growth because these leaders are really notorious for taking great pride in their work, which they should. They should take great pride in what their company or department is doing. But as a result, they begin to subconsciously, and I think sometimes consciously, if I'm being honest, sort of thrive on that feeling of being needed, that feeling of necessity and emergency that they receive from their team. And unfortunately, that's just really not a sustainable plan for growth. And it will really never allow you to have a company or a department that can run without you, which is kind of the dream, right? If you can hand off these things and focus on big picture vision, I mean, that's the dream. But if you're getting in the way, it's not going to happen. So how the hero behavior sort of surfaces is that as the company grows, the processes from removing the leader from day-to-day operations and sort of accountability check-ins, they haven't been created. You're still heavily involved. And your team is really conditioned to run everything through you. They require approval to action things. They need access and permission to information that only you know or have access to. It's also possible that this behavior type has surfaced because you don't have the right resources in place, meaning the right people in the right seats. And so then there's this like lack of clarity, if you will, around roles and responsibilities, because you're not letting go of the things that other people in those specific seats should be handling. And because of this confusion, what you may start to see, if you haven't already, is that your team becomes resistant to new change and then may begin to do their own sort of delegation blocking, if you will, because they want to remain relevant. So they're going to become possessive over work versus also delegating. So it becomes this like cycle, this perpetual cycle. The interventionist is the person who always loves to be in the loop. And this is me. And I don't remember who said no one can do it as well as I can, but you might be an interventionist. And this is where I struggle certainly the most. I often tell people this is a nice way of saying micromanager, but not all interventionists are micromanagers. It really is that interventionists tend to lack trust and feel like no one can do the job as well as they can. And so they're continually intervening in like the 80% of the work rather than focusing on their 20% most important and impactful work that only they can contribute. And because of those high standards, they tend to like sort of cocoon to protect themselves from delegation errors of the past. Everything has been set up to require their participation to keep errors to a minimum. And so I kind of think of this a little bit as a de facto quality control officer. Like we keep our hands in it because we want to make sure the results are perfect. But ultimately, interventionists are not really committed to delegation being successful because they just haven't prepared properly or don't necessarily trust the delegation process. And so this can stem a little bit from a hero complex, certainly, or it can just be a general buildup of distrust on relying on other teammates that sort of built up over time. Either way, a bad habit has certainly been developed of inserting themselves to remain in the loop at all times. And their constant need to control the outcomes frustrates their team and causes the team to retreat from helping that interventionist because the team just doesn't feel like their contribution matters. And so how this happens because really the entire business or the department is built solely on the interventionist ideas. You are probably familiar with that song, "We Built This City." I won't sing for you. It's when I can't sing and it's also 8:30 in the morning, so that's not happening. But think about it this way. Everything is built on the interventionist. Everything stems from their ideas, their plans, their vision, the sale, the execution, everything revolves around that leader. And what that leader has built on is largely reliant on their participation. And while they may have sought out great support in the past, despite their best efforts, that delegation has likely failed. So this pattern is what creates that cocooning tendency I mentioned earlier. And since then, the leader has not committed to the time or to make that delegation successful, nor have they provided the clarity needed to execute to their standards. And I can tell you, I'm a one-woman operation at Delegate in terms of our training and coaching department. And so when I have to bring other people in, I have to remember that I've built everything from my head, our processes, our systems, how we coach, how we train, and others don't know that. And so I have to be comfortable giving them some leeway to make mistakes and figure it out their way. But my interventionist tendencies make that challenging for our team to just step in and run with it. So I have to be really intentional about that when I'm working with our team. So type 3 is the isolationist. These are the people who you most likely hear say, "I'll just do it myself." Like they kind of throw their hands up, "I'll just do it myself." And it becomes hard to delegate because isolationists do everything themselves. They really do. And then they're often not available to have like the key conversations that need to happen with their team when they actually do try to delegate something. It's impossible for the team to execute well because they don't have the opportunity to connect with this leader and get the details they need, which just kind of spurs this like cycle of delegation not working. For isolationists, their established communication style across their team is what is ultimately holding them back and ultimately what needs to be addressed. Their team feels unclear on the process. They always require additional details from this type of leader to execute. And because isolationists are often not available to participate in the necessary conversations needed in order to like see things through, the challenge is even greater for their team. The isolationist is often too busy doing and is just not realistic about their own time and involvement in the process. which just jams up their team. And so they don't place enough value on the time required to really delegate effectively. And then they're going to find, if they haven't already, that they're going to run out of time and energy and bandwidth quickly because they're doing it all themselves. So the reason this happens is that isolationists are just completely overwhelmed and busting at the seams because they are holding so tightly to everything. They don't have time for delegation. So they're aware how much help the team needs, and they've probably managed to have a really great team in place to surround themselves with really strong talent. But there's one problem, right? The isolationist doesn't have the time to spend with their team to really make any traction. So they're likely, when you think about an isolationist, they're likely booked in back-to-back meetings all day. They have no open windows likely, which means that the time that is needed to really have crucial conversations that are necessary to move things forward just doesn't exist for these folks. So again, it's easier for me to do it than make the time to teach someone else. So the fourth type is the time optimist, and these people are typically unrealistic with the given time and resources they have in place. They're just overly optimistic about what can be accomplished with the staff and priorities that they have for their team. And they have a lot of energy around their ideas. I love that energy. This is like our visionary here at Delegate. But the challenge with the time optimists is that they often lack the restraint to fully act on their best ideas. And this behavior can create a lot of friction because their team is living in constant execution mode, and the competing messages from the leader around priorities confuses their team, who already have full days and full plates, right? So as a result, the team is going to become unfocused and confused because they're actioning multiple things at once and really aren't able to focus on just the most crucial results of that moment. And honestly, I think time optimists are brilliant in so many ways in developing new ideas and concepts. And they really have an enthusiasm for accomplishing those ideas that drives the energy of their team. Their team loves to help action ideas and bring those things to life. But again, the problem is if everything is urgent, if everything is a priority, then nothing is really a priority and nothing gets done well because there's just simply not enough time or resources to make it happen. And this bottleneck behavior of really oversharing their ideas can become toxic over time because the team just doesn't understand that sometimes the time optimist just needs to brainstorm. They're not fully committed to the ideas that they're sharing with the team, but that's confusing to the team if that's not clear. And so that can lead to burnout and frustration for everyone involved. Like I said, our visionary at Delegate Solutions is a time optimist. She's the person that if she and I are leading a webinar together, she's still working on slides up to 5 minutes before that webinar launches. And as someone who is not a procrastinator and gets everything done on time, it drives me crazy. But we've had to learn how to work through her unrealistic time frame to make sure that we both are getting what we need from that situation. So the last bottleneck type is the dreamer. These people love to ideate, and like the time optimist, the inclination to overload their team with their latest, greatest ideas is really distracting and confusing for the team. They haven't clearly defined what success in delegation looks like, which just naturally makes them unclear for the team because they haven't thought about how to actually execute on the ideas in further detail. So dreamers think everything past that new idea is boring. And that ambiguity is a confidence killer and a recipe for disaster, often for team members who like to execute. And that just makes it more challenging. Dreamers have a habit of changing their minds frequently as their ideas evolve, which again, just creates some confusion. So that habit of constantly changing their minds is going to drive your team a little bit crazy because they don't necessarily have what they need from their leader to properly action a project or idea. And that behavior can slowly chip away at impact and confidence and really productivity of their team to help the dreamer bring those ideas to fruition. A dreamer's favorite place is to hang out in the clouds, which again can create friction if they're not aware of it. No one does it better than they do when it comes to having the courage to really dream big and come up with these new ideas time and time again. I really admire dreamers. I'm not a dreamer, so I love these people who can ideate and come up with these really brilliant solutions and ideas. But the challenge is really when it comes to the handoff for these folks, to really be able to give their people the information they need to bring that idea to life. And what the team needs from the dreamer is really clarity and commitment to see only their most important ideas through each and every time. So I really believe that identification of our flaws is our biggest tool to elevate the work that we do. And so now that I've given you a little brief snapshot of each of these bottleneck types, I'm curious what resonated most with some of your tendencies. I'm curious to hear from a couple of you which bottleneck type seemed to fit your own habits when it comes to delegation. Anyone care to shout it out?
We'll just state it, good at what's yours.
It's definitely the time optimist.
Mm-hmm.
How much my idea will take the time and resources on other people, and then how the brainstorming can burn other people out.
Yeah, great, thank you. Anyone?
Oh, good.
I'd rather do it myself. Do it right the first time.
What was that? I'm sorry.
He's an isolationist.
Isolationist. Okay, yeah, that's very common.
This is Justin Draplin. I'm confused on, I got all these bad habits.
You might find it's really not uncommon, especially depending on your role at the company. If you're in a visionary role, then to kind of dabble in each of these, and it may depend on the type of project or new idea that you're trying to bring to fruition. But it is very common. I mean, I think while I tend to be an interventionist most frequently, I definitely have moments in each of these depending on what I'm being called to do and what the circumstance is. So it is very common to see yourself in all of these. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just learning how to overcome that, which we're going to talk about next.
I think you're doing great, Justin.
Aaron.
I love the support.
Mistake dreamer combined, did the verbal process ideas, but also underestimate the time it's going to take for execution of others.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear all of that.
He's the time optimist
Okay. Yeah.
and dreamer.
Okay.
Justin,
I'm a mix of the hero and isolationist.
Okay.
isolationist. Mr. Galbraith,
Say interventionist.
interventionist.
It's that, like, if I delegate something and then it doesn't go the way I want, I sort of lose patience and I just jump in there and knock it out.
Yeah.
Also, like I'm sending a message to the person that I delegated it to that you suck. And I had to get involved in this. Don't, next time don't suck.
Tim,
I'm probably interventionalist and a little bit of probably, I think every day I'm probably in one of these boxes at some point, you know what I'm saying? But I'll tell you what, I'm not much of a dreamer. I don't sit there and dream things up every day, you know what I'm saying? That's not me, but everything else I can see. I'm always in meetings. I don't delegate nothing, you know what I'm saying? There's just something in every one of the departments I could find.
awesome. Jimmy,
I'd say time optimist, and I'm probably too much of a hard driver. Then I try to push new ideas and probably need to stay a little more consistent with what we do.
Jamie,
Some of all, but probably time optimist and dreamer. I'm aware of all of it.
Rusty,
Dreamer would be first, and then probably the time optimist second.
right?
I think time optimist. Yeah, because I have a lot of projects and I really enjoy them, but at the end, I never enjoy them.
And I this is an interesting one because a lot of Justin Draper over there is a serial entrepreneur, so a lot of businesses. Yeah. Now, the real Justin Draper,
Please.
Draplin. He's Draplin, you're Draplin.
Just a human punching bag over here. I'm definitely going to be a 4 or 5. Primarily a time optimist, but also a dreamer as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think I often see those two things in tandem very frequently, which makes sense to me. They're both ideating, and then it's trying to figure out how to commit to the priorities that are most important.
Well,
about it.
I'm a 1, 2, and it kind of fluctuates between both of them.
Will's a hero and interventionist.
Okay.
Kind of more of an interventionist and a time optimist.
And I am definitely a time optimist and a dreamer, so. But I do tend to be down the street too. That's the whole room.
Awesome. Well, I shared a link with Josh for our Bottleneck diagnostic, which is an actual quiz you can take to just see if your instincts are correct. And my hunch is they are, but he'll send that out after the session too, so that you can really test it out. You could even share it with your team, because I think it's really interesting to see all the different bottleneck types that tend to exist within your team, to kind of think through how you work together to overcome those. So I want to now kind of move from identifying the different types to really exploring how we overcome those types, because that's really the first step to becoming a great disciplined delegator, is thinking about the strategies that you can use to overcome the bottleneck types as you see them surfacing, whether it's surfacing in your own behaviors or somewhere else within your team. So my slides are backwards for some reason. So we're going to start with the isolationist and then move to the hero. But I think it's really important to think about what you can do to navigate the isolationist behavior when you're overloaded and you just can't make time to let go of things. Isolationists need to understand the importance of showing up to meetings with their team. If you remember, isolationists are often in back-to-back meetings all day. But a lot of times that means some of those like little meetings, those shorter meetings that need to happen with the team member to get them caught up, those are the things they tend to skip. I've seen it time and time again with the entrepreneurs and business leaders we've worked with. And you really need to be able to prioritize and commit to a weekly standing meeting each week, or even each day if it's available, with your team to answer questions. It doesn't need to be a lengthy meeting. It can be a 15-minute meeting. It can be a 10-minute call, but it needs to be enough time for them to get their quick questions out that they need to be able to move forward with whatever it is you're delegating. And when you do that, you want to set a clear agenda for what you intend to accomplish during those meetings, so that everyone is kind of aware in advance of those expectations, and then you're not getting off tangents, which I'm sure we all know happens very frequently in meetings. I really encourage isolationists as well to empower their team to run those meetings, so that you simply show up and just have to answer questions. You don't necessarily have to be prepared with much. They can come with their questions. They lead the agenda. It's less work for you. And so during those meetings, as you're talking through, as they're asking questions and you're talking through the steps or whatever is needed to make that delegation successful, encourage your team members to repeat back what they heard you say, and make sure they're capturing all of that information, so that you're aligned on the next steps and the priorities. And that's going to build confidence that you are on the same page and allow your team to run with things more effectively. Just those quick meetings are really important. I would also suggest that you really establish a clear communication system that works for everyone on a consistent basis. Be sure you're creating a communication system that works with the reality of your day. So if you're someone, think about, do you prefer to be asked questions as needed? Would you prefer to lump them all in together once per day? Try to commit to a certain level of responsiveness with your team so that those questions are getting answered. And if you have a gatekeeper, an assistant, or someone like that, they can help you by blocking time each day for you to respond, or even to those questions, or they can even help draft responses on your behalf so that you just have to review it and tweak it before actually sending it. So if you have a gatekeeper, it's a really great way to use them. And they can help make that lift and commitment to being responsive a little less overwhelming. Be creative if necessary as well with how you're communicating. For example, if you're always on the go and never physically in the office, as an example, then does text messaging work? Are voice memos helpful? Is it helpful to have those calls or meetings while you're commuting to your next meeting? Get creative with what is going to work for you. We use Slack at our company. I think that's becoming more common, but if you've got a instant messaging system that works, think about those platforms that are going to make it easier for you to get back to your team in a timely manner in between meetings, and then they know when to expect or how to hear from you. But focus on finding a system for those regular updates that are going to work to keep that delegation progressing with minimal commitment from you. One of the things I always recommend with the leaders we work with is to have the person who is completing that project or taking over those delegations to provide a regular status update, whether it's daily or weekly. It needs to be something that aligns with your needs and preferences so that you feel like you know where things are and you can let go a little easier. You won't have that tendency to say, okay, I'm just going to do it myself, because you know the status of where things are, where they're getting stuck, how things are progressing. You don't have to question that. And that could be a quick voice memo. It could be a quick email. It can be a task list that is managed somewhere and you can just view the task list to see what's been completed. But you want to figure out a system that feels really easy for you and your teams to maintain. You don't want them updating 700 different platforms to keep you up to date on something. That's another common thing we see is like platform overload. So pick one way that people are communicating to give you those status updates so that you really can let go a little faster. And finally, it's okay to be really selective as an isolationist about your delegation. So focus on the most crucial things that you need to move forward and then commit to relaying details in an impactful way for your team. Take the small wins and then build confidence and solid communication to kind of help move things forward. Make the delegation as effective as possible by sharing your ideas for the success of the project with the team. What has to be true for this to be successful at the end? This is going to help create alignment around the expectations. And you can even have your team interview you to understand what those success criteria are. For a lot of us, even stopping just to sit and think about a process is overwhelming and annoying. We don't want to do that. So have someone interview you. They can ask what the steps are. They can ask questions that you probably didn't even think of and then capture that process and move forward with that delegation. And again, if you have a gatekeeper, that's someone who can help swoop in and build the documentation and processes for you. So that's another great technique to help get things out of your head more quickly when you don't have a ton of time. So for the hero to let go and delegate effectively, they have to commit to extracting themselves. Like, remember, these are the people that are kind of still involved because they want to come in and save the day. And it may seem really impossible at first if you are the founding member of your company, if you're that visionary, because you're so used to being involved with everything. It is hard to let go. But you can encourage that behavior by asking yourself to take a hard look at the parts of your business that are still coming to you for direction and guidance that just annoy you. What frustrates you? What are those questions you're getting over and over again that you're like, why do people not understand this yet? It's really helpful to sort of take inventory as well of the activities related to reoccurring processes that you're still involved with. Identify what is running through you that really shouldn't be. Consider, again, which questions your team is asking or which tasks are causing you frustration that feel repetitive, that you're simply it's not a good use of your time at this stage. And pay attention to repeatable tasks. Those are always delegatable because there is a process. If they repeat, there is a process that makes those happen on repeat. That is a huge win when it comes to delegation.
Hey, Eileen?
Yes.
One thing I was just going to tell everyone in the group, when you're doing this, all of you guys have employees, right? And so This delegation test is a really good test because a lot of times one of our frustrations to our employees is, especially our critical ones, is they're not getting to the important stuff. And figuring out how they can delegate is actually one of the ways to really do a good job of. I had a client one time who was, every time he hired a salesperson, it was costing $250,000 just to find out if the salesperson would work.
Mhm.
He had 3 salespeople, and what he did is we figured out he hired a admin person, and then he told the salespeople, "We're going to figure out how y'all can make more money, but we're going to use some lower the commissions to pay for the admin person," and it increased all the salespeople productivity by about 30%. So it does work. You always want to think about your critical employees too, because some of you guys, have a lot of businesses and have a lot of people who, work for you, but getting that higher level employee to delegate is another way to multiply the income.
Thanks, I'm sorry.
No, that's a great point. So, I mean, I think as you're testing people out, those repetitive tasks are really great. Anything what we call low hanging fruit are also really easy things to extract and hand off. So those are things that need to happen, but if they break, it's not costing the company some exorbitant amount of money. So maybe it's researching platforms or little things like that we all have to do because it helps keep things moving. But it's a good way to test people. And if it doesn't go perfectly, it's not the end of the world. I also think when it comes to the hero, that sometimes understanding how much time you're spending on those items that you don't want to be doing can be a really eye-opening activity. So I like to keep an inventory of things I'm doing and how much time I'm spending on them. Our company does this every quarter as a leadership team. And so if I'm spending 5 hours answering questions or engaging in activities that just don't make sense in my role, those are 5 hours I could redirect towards something of greater value. So I keep that inventory fresh and then pay attention to where am I getting bogged down and what's going to be the most impactful thing for me to let go of to free up that time again. And if you really want to take that to the next level, figure out how much you're paying yourself to spend on that time that is weighing you down and is not something you want to be spending your time on. With heroes, you always want to grab easy wins to build confidence. Select small, easy processes that you notice are kind of nuisances that are easy to capture and hand off. Write down the process. Again, identify who is responsible for it. And then as you're keeping your inventory, also write down who could take over those tasks because it fits within their job description or their talent area. You can also help by having your gatekeeper verbally redirect people. So if you are getting a lot of those same questions that are annoying and you are tired of answering them, have your gatekeeper learn how to answer those questions. Teach them the responses and let them redirect the team as needed. I also think it's really important to help people learn your decision-making process, why you make decisions the way you do. So if people are coming to you with questions, reverse those questions. Ask well, what do you think? What would you do? How would you solve this? And then explain to them why you would go a different direction or why you were making that kind of decision, because it's going to allow them to take more ownership and think the way you do. We also like to have code words for our heroes because we do see a lot of this with the business leaders we work with. And so it's a little cheesy, but we like to call out the behaviors as we're seeing them in the moment. So our assistants on our team will have a code word. I know one team uses the code word purple. I don't know how they came up with that, but when their business leaders that they're supporting start to have those hero tendencies, they will yell out purple, and it's like this mental trigger for that particular business leader to step back and realize they're starting to step in where they're kind of overreaching a little bit with the workload. If you related to the interventionist, again, you're feeling like no one can do it as well as you can. The struggle is often for these folks that they've had like old staffing issues that broke down potentially. And so those delegations just didn't happen as to the high standards that we expect as interventionists. And so that pattern has really just broken trust. trust. So a key element to breaking that cycle is to make sure you have the right support assistant in place that so that they can help keep things on track and execute your ideas effectively. So it's really important to be as clear as possible about your priorities with whoever that gatekeeper might be. If you have a lot of ideas and a lot of priorities that you're trying to figure out, it's really important to let your team know, and this is the same for dreamers and for time optimists, let them know you just need to brain dump or brainstorm. And so a lot of times we will recommend keeping like a parking lot list of all the ideas that you've got floating around, and then determining what the priority items are that you want to take action on. And your gatekeeper or whoever that brainstorm partner is can keep that list for you so that you don't lose those ideas and you can revisit them. But it's really important that they understand what you're brainstorming and what you're actually taking action on and why you want to take action on it. You want to work with your team to really maintain accountability. And again, to really capture the processes that are living in your head around these new ideas that you have. And so again, I highly recommend an interview. That has always been the easiest, I think, with business leaders, to have someone come in and ask questions about what it is they're delegating, what this new process or project is. And that allows the person to really run with it more effectively. There are a lot of really helpful resources floating around out there that help, develop process and tasks. So find a tool that is going to work well for you and your delegation partners to manage that process and to ensure the delegation is running smoothly. When you are delegating as an interventionist, make sure you're really clear on the success criteria. What does it look like once this project is complete? What does success mean? If you can provide that success criteria up front, it's going to create automatic alignment with your partner. Additionally, sharing how that activity ties into the big picture goals for the company is also going to create accountability. And it's going to put your mind at ease that they understand the gravity or importance of what it is you're delegating. So always establish who is doing what by when, and then set aside time to answer questions and give feedback. That's going to lead to a handoff process that you can trust, and they're going to be able to run with it more effectively. One of the things I always like to mention is that administratively, your work is not unique. A lot of the hesitation and frustration for interventionists can stem from their sort of own wrong assumptions that the delegation you're attempting to is too complex or really unique in some way. But a strong support partner or teammate, they're going to be able to separate the nuances from the core administrative processes that are part of that project or process you're delegating. I promise you that administratively speaking, the nuts and bolts of the work are always the same. And then it's tweaking it to fit your industry or, your end goals. And then finally, I just want you to consider, again, starting small if you're an interventionist. If you haven't caught on, that's a theme when it comes to delegation. Start small and then build. So pick something that's easier to hand off and make sure you're handing it off to the right person, someone who has that skill set and passion for that work. And then ensure you've got some sort of accountability in place to make sure that they can be successful. So create a system that's going to have some safety nets in place to help you feel comfortable knowing that the tasks are being handed off and handled properly. And just know yourself well. I mean, if you don't like to wait for updates or you're someone who always assumes the worst case scenario when you haven't heard something, create, again, those status updates to ensure that you have regular intervals of communication so you can kind of eliminate that mental stress in the same way. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to run through these and then hopefully I can answer questions if there's still time. But for the time optimist, it's really important to create boundaries. You need to understand that the people who support you and hear your ideas have enthusiasm around them. They believe in it's their responsibility to execute on all your brilliant ideas. But they too have limited time, right? And it can start to weigh on them if they can't keep up with your endless priority list. So as you discuss delegation ideas, ask your team how long it will take them to complete the work, and then work together to sort of prioritize the most impactful use of their time. Clarify which of your many ideas needs to be prioritized. What are you really most committed to? And then talk through due dates that need to be met to make that happen. And be realistic. Like if you throw a big project at them, don't expect it in 24 hours. Like talk through that timeline with them. Identify the next steps and discuss any concerns around timeline and turnaround. Allow your team to negotiate that turnaround time as well based on what else they have on their plate, so that they can make sure that that's getting done in the way that you envisioned it. But establish your priorities and align on who's doing what by when so that everyone is on the same page. Be clear on what the most important priorities are so that the team understands when it's okay to spend more time on one project or task versus another. And if they understand those timelines and objectives and priorities, they're going to accomplish those goals faster because they can map it out and time it out properly. But for items that are not immediately a priority, again, put those on a parking lot list, capture them somewhere so they aren't lost. This is going to allow you to steer the focus on the most immediate important things that you care most about while deferring other topics for later discussion. And you can use your gatekeeper or your delegation partner to revisit those at an agreed upon time so they don't get lost. And again, this is another way that parking lot is a great resource to determine if you really are committed to that delegation, because when you circle back to it, you may find it's not as high a priority as it once was. And then the last bottleneck, dreamer, we always tell these people that they need to stop and breathe and reflect for a moment. They don't need to delegate unless they're really clear that the work or project is important to them. So you want to gauge the level of impact of your ideas on the business first. Set a requirement for yourself to always explain what success looks like, to test your ideas out, and to make sure you are clear that it truly is going to be a needle mover before you hand it off. This may help you restrain from sort of oversharing your ideas with your team, which is going to help them feel a little more control, because again, they live in the execution of those ideas. So restraint is really important to help control the flow from becoming a flood. Collaborate on what your vision entails and how you and the team can best bring it to fruition through trial and error. Remember that the process documentation is a necessary step in the idea creation of new protocols and new projects. So it's important to outline that end goal, the success criteria, the details needed to complete that project. And this is not just so that you can think through the goal in more depth, but it's also so your team can have a really clear understanding of what you want to accomplish, why it's important, and how they can ensure success based on your criteria and thought process. And again, if sitting down and like writing out the process is not your jam, have them interview you, have them capture that so that they can really run with it more effectively. So one closing solve to tack onto this list I've provided for each of the bottleneck types is I really encourage you to reframe your thinking. Mike mentioned Dan Sullivan earlier from Strategic Coach. He teaches a really simplified concept called who, not how, which basically means that rather than always thinking about how we're going to get something done, we really stop and think about who can help us get that thing done. So with the idea of who, not how, really consider reimagining your admin or your gatekeeper as a thought partner. Your admin, if you have one, can truly support your delegation journey and implement processes and systems to support it, really creating space for you to think more strategically. Reimagining the admin as a thought partner is definitely possible because they likely already have the characteristics of being able to anticipate needs, to think strategically and really to work methodically. And they're going to crave more strategic work. So pulling them in at a higher level is going to really excite and invigorate them. So how do you move from a good to great admin and have someone who's capable of really absorbing the work on their plate? Through delegation coaching and training, the programs that we have, for instance, we've seen a lot of leaders and their teams really get revamped to work more effectively with their partner through those types of training and coaching. So we do offer that. But as you think about minimizing your workload on your plate, think about who can protect and gatekeep your time and energy to support your journey. And it is possible to reimagine those and recalibrate those existing team members those who's that you might already have in place. So in closing, I have just 3 quick takeaways from our time together. Certainly, becoming a disciplined leader takes intentionality. Remember that the mark of a game-changing leader is someone who respects those systems, is comfortable being held accountable, and is someone who really can temper themselves for the greater good. Really know your bottleneck tendencies. Really take that quiz. I'm curious to see if it does match what your instincts were today. But then share that bottleneck with your team, and so that you can spot and name these behaviors as they're surfacing, and then put up those guardrails so that awareness around them is there so that you can overcome those behaviors in the moment. And then again, find your who's. Remember who, not how, right? Reimagine and recalibrate your team so they can take work off your plate. Again, admins can be trained to do that level work, and we're certainly happy to help in that process, but never stop learning. I hope that what I shared today was helpful and that it will help you commit to letting go more effectively. But if we have time, I'm happy to answer questions, but I know I went a little over. So.
Does anyone have any questions?
Very good.
Awesome, that's really, really good. So one thing we're gonna do for the accountability thing for next month is try to get maybe $100, okay? You're gonna take the test and you're gonna give it to someone you work with. Basically, so I think we'll take the money, all the money we raise that day, and I'll give it to my favorite charity. Me. Myself. But, okay, guys. Hey, Eileen, thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this. Great presentation. I learned a lot from it. Again, I got all sorts of ideas that I was diving into. Cool. We appreciate you. Thanks.
Thanks so much for having me, and I hope the rest of your day goes well. So.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.